Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Are You Strong show. Man, I don't think I've been this excited about an episode until like tonight. And before I introduce who this young man is, I want to kind of read off a little bit about his history. He's still a very young guy, 28 years old, but he's from Caldwell, the town that I'm from and grew up in. And he wrestled in Caldwell. And Caldwell, I think, what I see, is a wrestling factory. There's a lot of really good wrestlers coming out of that high school. But before I say his name, listen to this. So, 4-year varsity wrestler, at Caldwell High School, which you don't find too many guys who wrestle all 4 years. Two-time New Jersey State medalist, all state honors freshman and sophomore year. And at the time, program record holder, which I heard just got broken this year. And I don't know the total wins. I'm gonna ask in a second. Team captain, and what's even better is member of the National Honor Society, which you don't find too many athletes that are members of that. But what makes this young man even more special is he decides to go to the United States Naval Academy, which is one of the most prestigious schools in the country. But man, it is hard to get into, hard to stay. And then he decides to wrestle there too, which magnifies the difficulty of being there. Between wrestling, academics, and then the military training, I can't wait to get into that. Graduates and goes into the Marines as an officer, spends almost 4 years as an officer with heavy duty responsibilities in Okinawa, Japan. I want to talk about, I hope I pronounced that right, in Japan. But the officer in charge, and he was in charge of a lot of financial stuff, which is, oversight of high stakes operational environments. We're going to talk about that. And recently decided the Marines were over. And now he's working, and which is really cool. He's working with his dad, who I know personally, who I've grown up with. And I want to talk about the whole family as a whole. But welcome to the show, Dean Caravella.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I just want to say, it's an honor to be here. I'm a huge fan of yours, huge fan of the show. So just want to say thank you. It's a really exciting day for me to be on the show. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad to have you. And indeed, I got so many questions to ask you, and we can go off in 10 different conversations. And I have a bunch of people who said to make sure to tell you they said hello. But before I get into all that, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, it's like you mentioned, it all started in the town of Caldwell, New Jersey. I grew up in West Caldwell, same as my dad, and I wrestled all my life. He got me into wrestling when I was about 5 years old. So it's something that since I was little, was really important to me, and it eventually became more than just a sport. It became a way of life, and it became something that I wanted to pursue onward. And I wrestled all throughout high school, and when it came time to decide on colleges, I knew I wanted to compete at the Division I level. Ultimately decided upon the United States Naval Academy, which is where I went. Started at the Naval Academy Prep School in Newport, Rhode Island, and then transitioned down to Annapolis, where I did 4 years there wrestling. Then, when I graduated, commissioned in the United States Marine Corps, and recently made the decision to move on back to the civilian world. So in May, I'll be done with active service. I'll get out as a captain, and I'll continue working with my dad. And that's pretty much where I am right now. I have a beautiful wife and a baby on the way. So, it's been a lot of exciting things, and life's good.
I mean, it's amazing, Dean, what you've accomplished by 28. It's most guys are still trying to figure out life by 28, you know?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's something that, it things get interesting, and I'm sure a lot of athletes and kids can attest when you kind of hit college, you have a couple different ways you can go. And
Yeah.
a lot of the times it's, hey, a career is going to take me to this part of the country, or it's going to take me out of the state, and they meet people elsewhere, and they start a
Yeah.
life and a family elsewhere. Or sometimes they have to stay where they are. And like, you never know where life's going to take you. And for
Yep.
me, it was just a matter of rolling with the punches. And I met my wife in college, and we it was an interesting path for her too, because I didn't think she saw herself living outside of the country. But that on top of, where I ended up being, it's just, it was about where life took me and I rolled with the punches and I'm happy
Yeah.
about where it is. So
And you're full circle back in town.
yeah, and that's it. And
Yeah.
you end up right back here, which is great.
Yep.
It's where we both want to be. So
It's where the roots are,
that's it.
right?
Absolutely.
So let's go way back. Let's
Yeah.
let's go back to that. What'd you say your dad threw you into wrestling when you were 5,
5 years old. Yep.
right? Now, was Tom Martin the coach then?
He was. So, I mean, this was, so my dad actually took over as like the rec coach for the little kids, like the under middle school.
Yep.
That's what I was most excited about. He came home with I remember it was a blue piece of paper, Caldwell blue piece of paper. And it was a sign up sheet. And, I just saw it as an activity to do something with my dad, and he
Yeah.
told me it was wrestling. I mean, we used to roll around on, the carpet all the time, it's just that when I was a kid. So I just saw it as a really fun opportunity. And it took me to places I never thought I'd go. And that's kind of the way it went. I just was like, yeah, I'm going to hang out with my dad all the time and do this sport. And it was a really
Yeah.
awesome time. So
Well, I literally hung up with Red, Red,
yeah, yeah,
Tom
of
Martin,
course.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I called him earlier. I said, "Listen, give me some dirt on Dean," you know. And he calls you back, and I'm like, "Give me something on him that I could kind of bust him on." He's like, he's thinking. He goes, "I don't have anything." He goes, he was so serious,
Yeah.
right? And he worked so hard. He's like, "You're one of the hardest workers he's ever had." And he
Oh,
goes, and he was really good. He goes, because I don't have any dirt on the kid. I'm like, you
right.
gotta have something. Did he do something wrong? Did he get in trouble? Give me something I can bust him on. Nothing,
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh. Yeah,
But
Coach Tom was great. He's
yeah,
such an awesome coach to have. I mean, Caldwell legend, everybody knows him and he's been
yeah,
around for so long and he was great with us in the program. And
yeah.
yeah, I'm shocked. I'm sure you had something. I was, dropping weight as a young kid. I'm sure I did or said something, but I guess
Well,
not.
he
Maybe
he
I was
was
better
he's
behaved than
getting
I
old.
thought.
He's getting old, so his memory might be going.
Maybe,
But
yeah.
here's one thing I want to touch on, and this is for anybody who might be listening. And I think I said this to you when I spoke to you on the phone. The town of Caldwell, which we're very proud of, right? We grew
Yeah.
up there, a lot of cool things happening. There's a couple of family names that when you hear the word Caldwell, the name automatically pops up. And your name, your family name, is probably it's got to be in the top 5 of all the names that come up because of the impact, the involvement, the roots that your family grew in that town,
Yeah. I mean, it
and
all started with my grandmother, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
God rest her soul, she just passed away, but I mean, she was so involved in the town and, did so many great things for, you know, the other parents, the kids, the
yeah,
community. And, it's just, it kind of allowed for, just positive recognition all around.
yeah,
So
yeah. Climback Court.
Clemback Court, that's so this. I spent 2 years in Clemback Court, when I was young, and it was what a great time. It's just such a great town overall, and
Yeah,
happy that we have a positive face in town. So
yeah. And it's a great town to be in. But so let's talk a little wrestling. Let's move it up to high school.
yeah.
When did you realize that, wrestling was really going to be your thing and like you were going to be one of the better wrestlers that ever went through that high school?
Oh, it's funny. I'll give you the step before high school when I really struggled, honestly. I was in eighth grade and back then obviously, the state tournament, middle school tournament was a big thing and I didn't qualify, you know what I mean? I literally didn't qualify as an eighth grader, which I had placed, twice before that. So to not qualify, really hurts. And I just remember being, you're I guess I'm a 14-year-old kid at the time, like just really beaten down and like wanted to be good at the sport and wanted to turn the corner. And I remember having a conversation with both my mom and dad, but having a conversation with my parents. And it just kind of got to the point where we were like, listen, if you want to do this, it's got to be really serious. And I didn't go out for, I was a lacrosse player as well. I didn't go out for lacrosse that season, focused on wrestling. I went that whole off season. There wasn't a weekend, I think that maybe one or two, but I think that my dad and I weren't on the road going to a tournament. I think I wrestled like 85 matches or something like that in that off season, which
It's a
is a
ton.
lot of wrestling, and but that allowed me to turn the corner. And it's funny because I was very focused at the time because I just this is what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be better. That's all it was. It's like I didn't even have a goal in sight necessarily. I just wanted to be better. And I think what happened was I got so many reps in. When you wrestle 85 matches, that's not even including all the club practices I was going to. So I was going to club, 3, 4 nights a week
Yeah.
and getting private lessons, on the side. So I was wrestling all the time. And, it just got to the point where you get focused on the craft, on the sport, and kind of some of the emotions get left out a little bit, and you're not really
Hmm.
thinking as much of, you know, like, hey, this is just another match for me, and then you get put in a more high stakes environments like at the high school, and now it's like, hey, we're wrestling, crosstown rival West Essex match or something that, to me, it's another match. A lot of maybe some
Yeah.
other folks that kind of feel the stakes of the environment, but then you get to different tournaments and stuff, and you're wrestling. I was a 106 pounder, and every once in a while you get the senior 106 pounder, the guy who just didn't, stuck around for your
Yeah.
106 pounder. And that didn't really mean as much as it maybe would have. It just was another match to me. So I think I started to get some more wins that maybe if I wasn't as prepared and I didn't do as many of those things and I didn't commit myself fully to it, it would have been a totally different story. And those matches ended up being wins for me. And I all of a sudden, when you turn around, you see it. Okay, I'm getting mentioned in some articles, which is cool.
Yeah.
I'm getting, hey, he's best of the rest is what they used to call it. I wasn't quite ranked yet, but it's like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I just wanted to keep it. Hey, it's just another match. Like, let's just keep it focused as best I can. Um, and I think that was when I hit the districts and I took first in the district. That's kind of when I really started to feel it. Of like, all
And what
right,
year was that?
my freshman year.
Freshman year.
Yeah, I was 106 pounds, was still 14 years old, and I was just like, all right, started to kind of feel it. But even then, it was like, okay, keep it locked in. I remember talking to my dad, like, let's just, let's focus on kind of one step at a time here. And it ended up working out well. And I kept climbing it. And, I got down to the States and, I know I'm kind of rambling on a little bit, but
It's all right. It's
got
good.
down to the States and, it's because I took second in the region, got down to the state and I lost in like the second round. It's a funny story. Someone who's actually going to be my brother-in-law. So you talk about how life comes full circle. You're the guy who beat me twice in the same tournament is going to be my
That's who you
brother-in-law.
lost to?
Yes.
He's your brother-in-law
Yeah,
now?
Taya Gazy, awesome guy,
Okay.
great individual. Like I love him, literally like a brother. He's an awesome person. So if there's anyone I could have lost to, yeah, I guess I'd choose him. But
You ever take him out back now and do takedowns?
no, God forbid, he'd still take me down. He's
All
awesome.
right.
Yeah, no, he's great. He wrestled at Princeton as well. So, but yeah, no, and you're fronted with the wrestlebacks, which is everyone's nemesis at some point in their life, and
Yeah.
it was just. I think wrestling 85 matches that summer allowed me to look at the wrestlebacks as okay, this isn't 3 matches in one day. It's just let's just wrestle this match and get to the next one, and you
One at
grind
a
through
time.
it, and that was it. So
So for those who heard what you said before, you didn't qualify.
yeah,
You know, I don't want to beat that too much, but a lot of people don't know what that means. Like, what do you mean you didn't
yeah.
qualify?
It means I didn't do well enough to advance. It means I wasn't based on my performance. I didn't place high enough in the tournament to allow me to go compete at the state tournament. So my season was over. There was no chance for me to even go
Mm,
try to place in the state again. Which I had friends that were going to go the next weekend to go wrestle in that tournament. So it's
yeah.
I had to go sit that out and instead of that, my dad and I got in the car and went down to Delaware because there was a tournament in Delaware that, their season had already been over. They started the off season. We're like, let's just go start up this off season. And we went down to Delaware and that's where I wrestled. So
If you have to think about it, it's probably the best, worst season you ever had,
it was
right?
it was the awakening. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It
Yeah.
was, and I am a full believer, especially now. I mean, I know I'm only 28, but there's been a lot of hindsight moments for me. Like everything happens for a reason,
Yeah.
100%. And how you respond to those situations is what inevitably gets you to where you're supposed to be. And,
Yeah. Definitely.
I could have responded negatively and said, well, maybe this isn't for me, and just kind of kept going at the same pace I was. But instead, luckily, I had some good advisement too. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to do everything by yourself. I had
Yeah.
people who were there to help me through the process, who were there to push me mentally.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just my parents. There were other, folks involved too. Some coaches, some club coaches and high school coaches that believed in me, and people that believed in me, teammates as well. That it's good to have a good support system
Yeah.
and put yourself with people that care. So
So talk about you were 14,
yeah,
right? Some kids are just they're trying to figure out what TV show to watch,
right,
you know, and talk about the mental pressure you felt, back then.
yeah.
Was it high? Was it heavy? Was it really tough to deal with at 14?
Yeah, I mean, you're still a kid, very much
Yeah,
so. You know what I mean? Like 100%. So, it feels like the world is ending. You know what I mean? Like that was my world at the time, was the sport of wrestling. And it's something I obsessed over. So for me, um, it definitely made things harder, but I think that made the sense of urgency a little stronger. And I
yeah,
think that's what made the decision to hit the road as much as we did. It made me feel a little bit more at peace with stuff. And like part of it is stuff that I struggle with. I had a lot of friends at the time that were doing things I wished I could have done. I missed out on like some weekends, with hanging out with people, and some weeknights that I could have been doing something in the summer, but I went to club practices instead. So like there's sacrifices that you have to make for sure. And I accepted them. I knew them. I could tell you what, I didn't want to feel the way I felt at that, like when I didn't make it, when I was in just down in the dumps. I never wanted to feel that way again. And I knew the only
yeah,
way to not feel that way again was to go hit the road and
yeah,
work and go get it
yeah.
done.
The Valley of Despair.
That was it. I
Yeah,
didn't ever, I knew one thing. I didn't want to feel that way anymore. So I had to do
yeah.
something about it. And that was it.
But you know what's great about feeling that way is you
Yeah.
understand what it's all about.
Yeah.
And one of two things happen. You either find a way to dig yourself out
Yeah.
or you bury yourself in.
Absolutely.
It's a choice, you
It
know.
is.
So
It is.
then you go on to high school and you set the record. How many total wins?
Yeah. So I finished up with 122 total wins, I think it was. I'll be honest, I'm not like, I don't have the best memory of my own stats. I do think 122 was the
I'm
number.
sure your
Uh,
father has it.
Yeah, he definitely has everything, like newspaper clippings and
Yeah.
links and whatnot. But
Yeah.
yeah, I did miss a part of my junior season though. I had my first shoulder injury that season.
In
So
high school.
in high school is when I
Yeah.
got my first surgery in high school, which I think there will be a common theme in this show here today, and one of them is you end up getting back to that kind of that pit, that despair area of where
Yeah.
am I going to go from here,
Yeah.
and when I had that first shoulder surgery, that was absolutely one of them. It was my first, like, I mean, not my first injury, but like very severe one for sure. So
How long did that keep you out?
I got the surgery after the season. It affected the end of my season. My junior season ended not the way I would have liked, but I was wrestling with one arm practically. It was just dislocating left and right. I got the surgery in March, and I wasn't able to get back on a mat until probably August, or actually not even. I wasn't able to get back on a mat until that next season, which was November, and
A
even
long
then I
time.
was limited. Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, or maybe it was like October maybe or something like that. And I'll bring on my brother-in-law again. I went to his club for a change that one time, and he kind of, you know, I wrestled with him a little bit, which was nice that he kind of, allowed me to ease my way back into it. So
So in other words, you're saying he didn't beat you up too much?
no, he didn't. He took it easy. He
Yeah.
could have, the opportunity was there, but he didn't do
Yeah.
it. He's a nice guy. So
That's good.
yeah.
So what do you think about wrestling in high school? I want you to compare the two in a second, but first let's go back to high school, and the discipline that it takes to wrestle, just wrestle, period. But in high school, you had tremendous success. What did that success teach you, about discipline and preparation, and how did you carry that forward into college?
Yeah, I mean it showed me that there is a lifestyle to live for sure. And there's got to be a mentality to have. And listen, I'm guilty of losing that at some points. There were times when we get to the college discussion that I definitely lost sight of things, and I didn't live that the lifestyle you're supposed to. And it teaches you to be disciplined because, you know, if you have one slip up or if there really wasn't a bad, like you couldn't have a bad day. You know what I mean? It's just because if you had a bad day and you lose a match you're not supposed to, or you do something silly and you get yourself hurt, in practice or even on the mat, like it being on all the time definitely teaches you to live a certain way, to be careful about, who you surround yourself with,
Yeah.
and just ultimately to live a life that you want to lead. Because when you're done with that, season's over. Where do you go from there? And you kind of try to keep yourself locked into the same mindset because you want to go back. I mean, there's another season right around the corner.
Yeah. You blink
So
your eyes, you're right there.
that's it.
You
Yeah,
know, there's no
100%.
room for error.
No,
There,
no,
there's
and
none.
it's stressful. It is 100%. And that's why I'm saying, like, there's times where I definitely not cracked, but like, where I broke the cycle, for sure.
Yeah.
And you always find your way back, but you just like, you're eating poorly and you just keep up that string, like, oh, there's another workout, tomorrow I can try a little harder at instead of giving it your all. Like those little defeats, if you want to have another theme of the show, like you want to have little wins because that
Yeah.
compounds into big wins and good things. The little defeats end up bringing you to the inevitable, which is just you're either going to
Yeah.
stay stagnant or you're just going to lose. So,
Well, we'll talk about that for a second.
yeah.
For the wrestling side, how much did you have to cut a lot of weight or no?
Yeah. So, my relationship with weight cutting is, you know, all the time. It just, every season was something. It wasn't until I got to my junior year of college where I went up to 174 that it was a little bit more manageable. It was around 15-ish pounds. Nah, it's a little heavy. Yeah, around 15-ish, 14 maybe. Which in the grand scheme of things for wrestlers listening, like they know it's manageable. For non-wrestlers listening, maybe they don't think it is, but
Yeah.
14 pounds isn't too bad, especially being that bigger, that much bigger at least than I
So
was
you cut
used to.
14 to get to 178?
174, yeah. I was
174?
hovering around like 88, maybe.
How
It
tall are
wasn't
you?
a good 88 though. So like
Yeah.
for everyone else listening, like it, I could have lost a few pounds. It was probably like a natural 10 almost, you know what I mean? But I had
Right.
4 pounds of garbage weight in there. So.
But how tall are you?
I'm about 5'9". I was 5'9" in college
So
too. So.
5'9", 188. That's big.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's
That's
decent
a
size.
good sized guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know
I'm
what I mean?
I'm bigger than that now because I haven't had to cut a lot of weight. I can actually, just kind of
You could
stick
eat
with
and relax.
eat and relax, lift weights, enjoy myself,
Yeah.
But
Yep.
high school was where it was tough. I my junior year, the season I had the shoulder injury, went into that season knowing I had a shoulder injury. I was ranked pretty high in the state at the time at 120. I was walking around at like between 47 and 50 though. And so I made that cut down to 120, which that was the most difficult weight cut I've ever had to do, and maybe one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my life, honestly.
But
Maintaining that was brutal.
Dean, how do you do that?
Yeah.
It's like you're 24 hours starving.
Yeah.
You're
I
like,
mean,
and
pretty
then you got to
much.
go to class, you got to go
Yeah.
have a life, you got to go to practice. How do you function at cutting 30 pounds?
It's funny, it's one of those things where I think back on it too, and I'm like, it's because it's difficult. I mean, you get into such a negative state all the time. Like you're upset all the time. You're
Yeah,
just like, because you're tired, you're hungry. You want to just you just want it to stop. You know what I mean.
yeah,
You just want to turn the corner.
yeah,
Um, I think you just get into a state of focus, I think. And I think a lot of other guys who have had to do big weight cuts kind of know what I mean. Like you just kind of get caught up in it and you just are like, all right, like I have to see this through. I
yeah,
got to fight another day. It's just one more workout. I'll, to me, the thing I would always say is like, I'm going to be able to eat and drink what I want again. It's just not today. Like today's just not the day. The day will come. It'll happen again. And I think I tried to, understand that I couldn't use it as an excuse to fail at school. I also had a mother who wasn't going to let that happen. She made it very apparent that, the priorities are going to stay the same and, you're
yeah,
making this decision. We had a conversation about it, me and my parents, and they're like, if you're going to do this cut, everything has to still stay the same. Like, this has got to be your decision. and I wanted to do it, and I had to hold my word, and it's just, and
Yeah.
I think I
And I mean, the
did. So
discipline, it's got to be
yeah,
crazy, right?
yeah. My life was pretty tough, and I think the more difficult thing about it was I wasn't able to really get on a wrestling mat because I was injured. I first dislocated it that summer, was kind of told, hey, stay away from the mat, focus on rehab. So not having wrestling workouts is really difficult. You can
Yeah.
get a lot of weight off in those practices. So it was all running. I'd get up in the morning, I'd run 5 miles before I went to bed. When I got home from school, I'd run another five, and then on the weekends, morning five, afternoon five, evening 3 to 4. And that's miles a day. And that's what I
And
was.
you're not eating much either.
No, my fuel was protein bars, apples, and PB and J's, which I learned in college how to cut weight. That is not the way to do it. I figured it out later on in life. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot of high school wrestlers out there who transition to college who also made similar
Yeah.
mistakes that I did, but I matured in college and realized there's a much better way to drop weight than
Yeah.
that. So,
I've interviewed a number of wrestlers on the show, and
yeah.
they all talk about once they got to college, how they learned through nutritionists and all kinds of different ways. There's like you can still eat and cut weight.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's just how clean are you going to eat?
It's how clean, and there's times to eat, and
Yeah.
you know there's there's just so many better ways to do it, and there's ways to not dehydrate yourself as much as you are earlier in the week. Like
Yeah.
I would cut out in high school, I'd cut out fluids earlier in the week. Just college, that wasn't an option. Like our coach
Yeah.
in college told us all early on. He's like, listen, like it's shorts, and like especially early in season, like shorts and t-shirt, you're still gonna sweat. Don't break out the sweats till later in the week.
Yeah.
And there's much better ways to do it and keep the fuel going. Especially my coach, my senior year, Kerry Cole, fantastic coach, love him. And he would tell us like you're gonna like night before, like we're eating meals the night before. Like I know you're cutting weight, but like you can't go into the match the next day not having a meal the night before, even the day of having something. You just because you're not going to compete well. You're not
Yeah.
used to having. You got to have a steady state of nutrients. You got to have a steady state of fuel in the body, or else you're going to get out on the mat and it's going to reflect
Yeah.
on the performance. And
Now, didn't they change all the rules around cutting weight?
I'm sure they did. I mean, I know when I was I don't know what it is now, to be honest. I'm pretty, once I graduated, I got caught up in the military. I got pretty far
Yeah.
removed from a lot of things. And I mean, finding out that it was a 3 point takedown, I was like, oh my goodness, it's
Yeah.
crazy. A lot of crazy rule changes. But I know when I was in college, there was pretty strict hydration rules. They had
Yeah.
descent plans. So you would have to weigh in at a certain weight, get pass a hydration test, and then based on what you weigh and where you want to go, there's a certain time you wouldn't be able to wrestle that weight depending upon how long it took you to get there.
Yeah. So all these checkpoints.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah,
You know, in
yeah.
high school there was no checkpoints, right? It's like
No,
just starve and good luck.
no. High school was the wild, wild west when it came to cutting weight for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
another name, obviously the Garamella family, the
Yes,
Garamellas, right?
absolutely.
And Red and Mike and I all were in the same class together. And so, but Mike says hello, Mike Garamella
Oh, he's the
says
best.
hello,
He's the
and
best.
obviously Red says hello. And but then Gary was your coach too, right?
He was. He was the head coach for my
Yeah.
entire time. Yeah.
How was that wrestling for him?
Great. I love him to this day. It's funny. I saw both him and Mikey G recently, actually, and
Yeah.
it's great to see him. It's such a fun reunion anytime
Yeah.
I get to see them because they became really positive figures in my life. Like mentor individuals, and um, they cared. They
Yeah.
absolutely cared. It wasn't a normal like, hey, show up to practice, coach says a few things, and and that's it, it's over. Like
Yeah.
he very much so cared about the guys, and he made it known that like he was there for them on and off the mat, whatever you
Yeah.
needed. So he was a
Yeah.
really good coach.
That's another callable name, Garamella,
Oh
in
yeah.
in the top
Yeah,
five. You know what I
absolutely.
mean? And like that their family, oh my God, they were involved in everything,
Everything.
everything, you know.
Absolutely.
And then obviously you got the Martins, that family name, again in the top five,
Yeah.
involved with everything. And I don't know who's taken over those roles and responsibilities in the town now, but I think it's different today than it was back then.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give Coach Sean Romano a shout out. I mean, the
Yeah,
Romano
yeah,
name is, I
Romanos.
mean,
Yep,
he took over the program. He was one of my coaches, and I mean, what he's done with the program as well.
yeah,
I mean, they are just really good right now. I mean,
yeah,
they're wrestling really well. They're winning section titles left and right, which is incredible. Guys going down to Atlantic City, like Carmine Sipper, great guy going to the Naval Academy. Really proud of him. A lot of good stuff going on in the town in all
yeah,
sports. I mean, there's been a
yeah.
lot of great stuff going on. So
Did the Naval Academy ask you to get involved with recruiting him at all, or no?
it's funny. So I knew Carmine's dad, great guy. Just because Call was a small town, so I knew him, and I think he had reached out to my dad or something, and I had talked to Carmine a little bit, kind of about the school. He had questions about things like that, and then I had reached out to Coach to kind of talk to him and I see if we can establish the relationship and. It ended up working out really, really well. I mean, I think even if I wasn't in the picture, he would have been there anyway. Like he's
Yeah,
that kind of guy. You know what I
yeah.
mean? He didn't need my help. He was gonna find his way down there either way. He's a great guy. So Coach Colout's a fantastic guy, and he saw great things in Carmine, and I know he's gonna do awesome. So
Yeah, that's great. So talk about your recruiting process.
yeah,
College recruiting today is insane.
yeah,
NIL, all the collectives, all this kind of stuff. Kids are getting paid. They're just choosing schools because they're getting paid. But
yeah.
that doesn't happen in the military academies.
No.
Talk about that process. Like, how did you end up saying, hey, you know what? That's where I'm going? Because you didn't decide to go to just a really good school. You decided to go to one of probably the most prestigious military schools and most difficult schools to go to and wrestle at, graduate, and again go into the military. How did that
Yeah.
whole thing happen?
It's funny. I mean, the recruitment process for me, it had gone a way that I thought it was going to go until it didn't, if that makes sense. I got the injury, everything changed. You know, I didn't want to be the guy to hide it. And, I told schools and, they reacted the way they did. So I kind of, the framework I had where I thought I was going to go slowly turned into, hey, we got to readjust our options because there isn't as much interest because of this.
Now,
Um,
was there other schools you wanted to look at or no?
I didn't. So at the time, I had schools on the list. The thing was, I didn't really think that I had what it took to get into the Naval Academy. They weren't on my list, like because I just kind of already ruled it out, which is another thing and another lesson in life. Like you can't rule anything out. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
counted it out. I didn't think it was an option, and it got to the point where I was like, well, let's just try. You know what I mean? It was really my mom who said it, which she talks about, how, I mean, the Naval Academy is not an easy school on mothers. So,
it's not easy on anybody.
they got down to the conversations where I was like, well, mom, you brought up the idea of let's give this a shot. So,
Yeah,
but no, all joking aside, I mean, it was something that we gave a shot. They responded, got the visit set up, and for me, obviously everything is daunting. It's a school that has a lot of unknowns, and you really kind of have to put a lot of trust in the process. And it took me going down there to really get sold on everything. And I was able to see the guys on the team, meet the coaches, see the atmosphere. I stayed overnight there, and I think I had stayed overnight and met, guys on other teams at different schools as well. I'd done a few visits, and nothing against those other schools. They were great institutions. Those guys were great guys on those teams, but there was something different about that environment in Annapolis, and there was something different about the Navy wrestlers, in my opinion. It
yeah,
was a bond. You could see it. You could see the bond that those guys had. Um, a true brotherhood of guys on a team, which is what I wanted, honestly. Like
yeah.
you asked me
But
what I wanted on paper. Like, yeah, I want to wrestle Division One. I want to go to an athletic. I want to go to an academic institution that's going to set me up for success. But I wanted to have a brotherhood of guys. I wanted to
yeah,
have a great team. I wanted to
yeah,
be around guys that are going to be best friends with for the rest of my life, and that's
yeah,
exactly what I got. So.
yeah. Do you think the difference there is because the guys that are going to the Naval Academy, they're going to the Naval Academy first to wrestle, versus the other guys are going to that school to wrestle first and then be part of the school.
Right. I mean, it's definitely, I think the responsibilities outside of it, you have to ultimately want to be there. And I think that's what a lot of guys who go to the Naval Academy struggle with is, you know, because I mean, I struggle with it. I went there, I was like, I'm a wrestler, you know what I mean? Like, and like, I wanted to serve. I loved the idea of it. I'm a patriotic guy. And at the time I was 18 years old and I was, super excited about it. But you don't, I mean, some people get the full picture of it, especially there was a lot of guys who come from, legacy military families. Like they understand
Yeah.
maybe earlier on. I didn't come from a military family. I didn't know what any of that stuff really was. I was still honestly kind of like a punk high school kid, who just showed up, didn't want to be told what to do or anything, even though I signed up for a place that, hey, you're going to be told what to do all the time and you got nothing to do about it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I didn't, it took me a while to kind of grasp that concept, like the immaturities had to be shaken a little bit.
Yep.
And once that happened, like you eventually find your way. And I think there's some folks who that adjustment took maybe a little longer, and that's why maybe it didn't work out. But it took me a while. I didn't really get like it took me like 2.5 years to really get adjusted there. So yeah.
So what was that first day like? And
Oh
for a
man.
guy like me who sits on the couch, right, and watches the stuff on TV, they show West
Yeah.
Point, they show Naval Academy, Air Force. That first day when you show up, it's like chaos, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because we had our own. Well, I went to the Naval Academy prep school first, so we had our own like boot camp, I guess, if you like, you want, if you will, and it I didn't really know when it started, you know. So I'm like there and going through the process, and I still got my hair and everything, and everyone's still a dude to me, or like a girl or a person, So like I didn't understand formalities. I didn't know when it began, and then all of a sudden it began, and I didn't know really. Like they just started kind of being harsh and yelling, and I'm like, all right, guys, like let's relax. It's not that big of a deal. And then I'm like, oh wait, it started. Whoops,
Yeah.
So, and
It's a
then you
big
kind of
deal.
have to lock in, and then all of a sudden from there on out, it's just your life is, at least for that. I think it was only 3 weeks, but it felt a lot longer than 3 weeks at the time, and for your life for that 3 weeks is hard, and you're gonna do what they say, and it ended up being a difficult time that I look back on fondly. One of my best friends to this day was in my platoon, and he was on the wrestling team with me the whole time. So it's just, we look back on that time. It's a very, that's what makes the relationships different at that school.
Yeah.
We both served in the Marine Corps together. It just, when you have that many layers of, you know, just trials, all these different trials and
Yeah.
trying times, and you get through it together. That's what makes those relationships different. So,
I can only imagine.
yeah.
So describe like what's a day in a life like
Yeah.
of not just a college wrestler student, but now a military college wrestling student. What's that
Oh,
like?
yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, and that's the other thing that's so cool about the Naval Academy is, you get prepared for the real world. There's a lot of schedules that I've heard of from college kids, other friends and stuff, and like it's no wonder why a lot of other college students, whether they're athletes or not, have a tough time when they get out because they're not used to that, to a real life schedule.
Yeah.
You're not going out on a Tuesday night. I mean, you can, but you're not going to do real well in your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to get up the next day with responsibilities. There was no such thing as skipping class at the Naval Academy. It just
Right.
wasn't. It did. I mean, did kids find a way to do it? Yep. Did they get in a lot of trouble? Yeah. So it's like, it's one of those schools where you don't get away with much. And, for me as a wrestler, you get up in the morning, we'd have a workout of some kind. And if we didn't have a workout, we had some like kind of team event, in the morning. So we were up by, 6-ish, maybe earlier, depending, sometimes 5, depending upon the workout or the event. Do the event, go to class. You had class until 11:45. Second class got out. It was a blitz to the locker room. Got an afternoon workout in. Workout ended around like 12:45 ish, so about an hour maybe, and get to lunch by 1. Eat for 20 minutes. Go to class. Yeah, class until 2:45. Right back down to the training room, or locker room, whatever you needed before practice. Kind of get ready to go. Practice at like 3:15, practice, and then when you're done with practice, get work in afterwards, whether it's back on the mats doing something, training room, whatever you needed. shower, eat dinner. You're in the dining hall probably by like 6:30 ish, maybe. You don't get back to your room until 7:15, and then start your homework and got a lot of homework to do. So, it's
Yeah.
like don't really get a chance to look at my work until 7:15. And then, was up till whenever I was up until it was done, get up in the morning, do it all again. So that
Now,
was
what about the military exercises? When do they all take place?
so that's the thing, right? You like a lot of the time there were things that had to make up, and and a lot of that was okay, you get back at 7:15, now here's your obligation to whatever you have to do. And whether it was, some sort of brief, some sort of, strategical study. Like there was a lot of like professional knowledge things we had to do, especially as freshmen. That was a mandatory thing. So like we get back, on deck as we call it, or back to your floor, and it was getting right into the mix with doing some kind of professional knowledge, thing. And luckily with wrestling, we did kind of have the ability to prioritize our workouts. But then when the off season was there, like we're right back into the mix, and you're then back on the regular schedule, and you're going to parades, and you're going to the drill field, and you're going to different kinds of briefs. And like because you do have all these different kinds of leadership folks from across the fleet, or different influential people come speak to us. And there's all different things that we had to prioritize and do. There were times where I didn't get to start my work till 8, 9 o'clock at night, because there were different things that we had to do and attend. And I think for a lot of the service training, that occurred a lot in the summertime too. A lot of kids get off from college and they have the whole summer. For us it was blocked off. You had different blocks of time. And for us it was, you were doing okay, you got 3 weeks off and that's it, and you come back and you go do a block of training for another 3 weeks, and then you move and you go do a block of training for another 3 weeks. And whether that's on the west coast visiting a bunch of different naval vessels and surface warfare ships, or you're on the east coast training with marines on Camp Lejeune, there's different things that you would be doing in your summers. um, Overall, just a very interesting institution. So
Very structured. Very
yeah,
structured. So
yeah,
you
no,
literally get 3 weeks off a year,
pretty much.
pretty much. With it,
And that's the thing, because I mean, they give you off for holidays. Like there was a holiday leave block, but it was wrestling season. So
yeah,
for us,
yeah, you don't get off.
we got a week off, I think, and then
Yeah,
we got a week off for spring break. But that depending, sometimes guys, that was around nationals time, so guys who were staying back to train for nationals, there was no spring break. Guys who were
yeah,
staying back to train with those guys who were going, there was no
right.
spring break. So it's just we got time off, for sure, but it wasn't as much as you'd think.
No,
But that doesn't mean we didn't get time off. So
right. You got a little
there's
break here or
still,
there.
yeah, there's still free time. Like my parents were able to come down to Annapolis here and there, and there was a couple weekends where I got to go back and see family and all that. But
Your parents must have loved coming down there.
they loved it.
Yeah,
Honestly, they did. I mean, listen, I didn't really get a chance to appreciate the school until you graduate and you look back. I went down
yeah,
to Annapolis for the Army Navy match with a couple of my friends that I graduated school with. And, that's when you begin to appreciate it a little bit more, when you look back on it. And
yeah,
I think that's something I would have definitely tried to tell myself in hindsight, is enjoy the time, even though it's really difficult.
yeah,
I look back on a lot of it fondly. And one of my best friends was my roommate, who wasn't a wrestler. He wasn't really an athlete. He was a great guy, and we were really close. And we were talking recently, and he was like, we used to talk about how we just didn't want to be here, and we couldn't wait to graduate because of how difficult it was. Because I look back now, and because you get out to the military and the fleet, there's a lot more items and a lot, more trying times that you all of a sudden look back, you're like, I kind of miss being able to mess around in
yeah,
the room with my roommates and kind of hang
yeah,
out, and and not enjoy yourself, but you just kind of confide in other people,
yeah.
so
Well, you don't appreciate what you don't have until you don't have it anymore.
yeah, pretty much,
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Yeah,
And you look back on those tough days, like, man, you're like, it was tough, but I want it back.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
You know?
And listen, Annapolis is beautiful. You're right on that river.
Yeah,
The worst case, you get to look out and see that every once in a while, so it's
yeah,
pretty cool.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
So you had some injuries while you're in school.
Yes. Yes.
Walk me through that, and then
Oh,
how did you handle that mentally? Again, all the things you got to deal with, and then you got to put that on top of it.
yeah. So the shoulders was my issue. I got the shoulder surgery in high school. Um, that surgery held up for my senior season and then my NAP season. And then right before we were leaving the prep school, I had an incident where, the surgery kind of fell apart. And then I got to the Naval Academy, and that's when officially it, dislocated, and that was it. It was that was over. It was,
This is the same shoulder, or the other one.
same one. So got the surgery, came back the next season. So my, technical freshman season, because I had the prep school season. My freshman season was out the window. The whole season was gone. Um, October of my sophomore season rolls around. So now this is October of 2018. Just getting back on the mat. I'm cleared, good to go. And that right in like kind of late October, early November time frame, got caught in another tough situation in the practice, dislocates again. Um, so back to square one, and you lose a lot of time. The guys get
Yeah,
better. You get better in high school. Imagine how much better you get in college with the
yeah.
resources. So it's like I really only had one season to wrestle and get better and focus on getting better at the sport of wrestling. And it was my prep school season, and that's a little difficult because, it's a smaller team. You don't have as many guys around your weight to train with. The coach was great. I loved him. He's a great guy to this day. We have a great relationship. And, it's just there's only so much you can do with that year. So then you lose your freshman season, you lose your sophomore season. Now I'm like, I'm not really feeling like a part of the team, one,
Yeah.
even though I have great friends and good guys. But you have no choice almost but to feel like an outcast and different. And you kind of begin to question your role in things. You begin to wonder if you have it. Like, am I good any? Like, I don't know if I can compete with these guys. And I thought about hanging it up, Jeff. Honestly, like I was ready to kind of be done. I had a lot of conversations with my folks, and they were like, listen, you got to do what's best for you. And if this is too much, then I mean, school's one thing. Everything I described, like the lifestyle is that all that was still going on.
Yeah.
I had to keep up.
But how do you do
And
that with a busted up shoulder?
so that's the thing. I mean, the one thing the Naval Academy was really good at was the medical resources. They had a lot of medical resources. They took that stuff very seriously, because at the end of the day, I mean, like they want you to be able to be healthy enough to serve in
Yeah.
serve the country, and
Yeah.
they were very good about ensuring that we got timely care. And then I will say my physical therapy the first time around, like could have been a little bit better, meaning when I was at school. And then the second time around I did it with my trainer, who ended up being our current trainer, Brian. Shout out to Brian. He was the one who ended up nursing me back to health, for sure. I owe a lot to him because he took it very seriously. There wasn't a bad time for me to come by and get some work in and kind of rehab. And yeah, I mean, so having a bad shoulder wasn't easy at that school because I still got to work. I still got to type with sling on. You know what I mean? Like I still got to write. Like, hey, you got a test coming up. Like, all right, we'll postpone it a week maybe, but they're not slowing down for me. You know what I mean? Like,
No.
and I didn't want to slow down either. I knew what that meant. I knew some people who had injuries, and their time looked a lot differently because they couldn't keep up, and I didn't want that to be me. So there was a definitely a mental burden to kind of hang in there. I was a horrendous student overall. So for me, it was already difficult to begin with, and trying to be able to kind of keep up with it definitely was a lot. But
Dean, talk about that for a second. I mean,
yeah,
I know you in your mind, maybe you're comparing yourself because, and when we compare ourselves to other people, we remove all the joy out of our life, right?
yeah,
But how bad of a student were you? I mean, you can't be that bad and stay in that school.
yeah. It's funny. Like I always had a way of making it back. I mean, I was a bad student. I can give you numbers and you'd be like, what? Like really? Yeah, I was. I didn't have it really, and I know a lot of guys have it. It's a math and science institution.
Yeah.
Mixed in with a lot of engineering stuff as the core classes. That's not me. I don't have that. Foundationally necessarily. I'm a better math, or I'm a better English, history,
Yeah.
literature kind of learner and,
Yep.
student. So
But
I
how'd you figure
struggled,
it out?
but the thing was, they gave very strict benchmarks to hit. And I would honestly, I'd either barely hit them, and if I'd either not hit them or I'd barely get there. But here's the one thing that kept me around because I was on the chopping block constantly. Like they wanted to kick me out of the prep school. I kid you not. I almost didn't make it. They wanted to kick me out. The difference for me was the Naval Academy had something called extra instruction, EI,
Hmm.
and you can go after hours to go learn, sit with instructors, sit with tutors. I had more EI hours than anybody. I put in the work. The work was there. And there's probably EI instructors out there if they were to see me, like they got sick and tired of seeing me. I was in my professor's face constantly. I knew that I didn't have it, but the one thing I could control was the amount of times I got in that professor's face and the amount of times I showed that I was trying. At the very least, I'm trying. I want to be here. I want to make this
Yeah.
work.
Now, was that your choice to do all that, or somebody encouraged you to do that?
It was my choice, because like what it ends up being is when you perform poorly, like they start like saying, "Hey, this is what's going to happen." But for me, it was already happening. Like the IR was already going. So you log everything. We had a system at the Naval Academy where all the hours get logged. So all the instructors, all of the advisors, and everyone can see, like leadership staff. They see your hours and they can see what you're doing. So yeah, my grades maybe weren't here, but they can see my hours. And part of my academic struggles definitely came from the background noise. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to wrestle, I couldn't. I wanted to
Mm.
feel better and be healthy, I couldn't do it. There is a lot of extra military noise, and there's a whole company leadership structure. Peer leadership, peer like
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that go on at that school that you don't get at other places. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
a lot of that background noise compiles, and that made my life a little bit more difficult in the classroom. But at the very least, I was trying to show up and do my part at
Yeah.
off hours. So,
Now, how about teammates pulling you along? Were there
oh
guys like putting their arm around you, say, "Come on, man, let's keep going"?
yeah, and that's what and honestly, and that's why you go back and look at hindsight. Like that's why choosing the Naval Academy was the best decision for me because I put myself in a spot where I had guys like that. And now I'm sure it's the same at other schools. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But if it wasn't for my teammates, honestly, I don't think I would have continued necessarily. I mean, I'll shout him out. Like one of my best friends, Cody Travis, like he was the guy I was telling you about. I started the prep school with. I remember telling him like, because I can confide in those guys. They're like my best friends, and I told him I didn't know how if I wanted to keep going, and it wasn't even an option. He's like, stop. Like you're like, what are you gonna do? Not try? I remember when he said that. Like, what are you gonna do? You're not like you already got the surgery. It's done. I got my third surgery. He's like, you already got the surgery. You're not gonna try. Like you're not gonna come back. I'm like, that's a like, how could I not? I owe. He's like, you owe it to yourself to go back. And I knew it deep down. He pointed me in a direction that I already knew. I knew deep down I had no other option but to try. And honestly, best decision I could have made. First, I was definitely set behind from a technique standpoint, from a conditioning standpoint. There was a lot I had to catch up on. And I think the cool part about that junior season for me was I just let the emotions get like there was no emotions anymore. What happened? Like you couldn't
Yeah.
break me at that point.
Yeah.
Like what's like at this point, like there was nothing. And if I didn't perform, I came back the next day, I tried again, and that was it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I knew the only way was forward,
Yeah.
and I knew the writing was on the wall for me. I just wanted to be able to compete at the highest level for me. I wasn't out there trying to set records. And I ended up getting back to the point where I was the number two guy. Number one guy in my weight class was a stud. He was ranked in the country. Great guy, really good friend to this day. Love him. And I was able to back him up, and I went on all the trips. I got to wrestle in tournaments off season, like or not off season, in season tournaments like the Southern Scuffle, like the ones that kind of allow more than one per
Yeah.
weight class. And then injuries happen. Some guys pop with certain things, and like I was able to get in the lineup a few times. So I ended up getting myself to a point where I was back on the mat, setting that up for my senior season where I landed a starting spot. So everything turned around all just because I made the effort to get back in it.
So Dean, what was that like back on that mat, regular season, dual meet after all that stuff?
It's you know, and it's a testament to how well we were prepared by. So we got our new coaching staff came in, Coach Colot, and he prepared us so like to the point where we got on the mat, it's just, hey, trust in your preparation. And by that point in time, another theme that like I kind of want to highlight on is, and the advice I give to any college athlete is you got to take the emotions out of it. You know what I mean? You have to just focus on the preparation and you have to trust the work you put in. And we all trusted the work we put in. We trusted, the staff, we trusted our teammates, and we all really wanted to be there. So by the time I got on the mat, believe it or not, I was only thinking about, okay, here's the game plan I set this week. And I didn't really care who the opponent was. It was just, here's the game plan. Let's execute the game plan and let's just try to get this win here. You know what I mean? It wasn't about, I didn't really have a moment to even think. And there were times where I'd talk to like my dad and stuff, and he'd be like, how cool is it that we we're able to get back and do it? And that's kind of when you feel it and you get to enjoy how you got to be able to get yourself back to
Yeah.
somewhere you didn't like. I never would have thought that I'd be back that I'd be in a starting lineup at Division I school. I didn't, it wasn't in the cards for me because of all the injuries and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But being able to stay tenacious and being able to be prepared well
Yeah.
ultimately changed it.
Well,
So
how was it getting that first win?
it's great. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, when I got back my junior season, when I got on the mat, because I got that third surgery, I came back. It's to this day, it's still holding up strong. I can still go out there and scrap, and it's still, I think, it's still holding up strong. But I got back. I went to an open tournament, and I both matches lost, and I was like, yes, I was nervous. I don't know, like that's when the emotions were there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember having a conversation with my dad. My goal that offseason was to wrestle in a tournament called the Navy Classic. And for some reason, that was the tournament I wanted to wrestle in. A lot of it was at our own turf. Good teams came. I always was on the sidelines for it, watching or doing some kind of support. And I was like, I don't want to be behind the scenes for that one. I want to wrestle in that one. And, went to that first Princeton Open, lost two. And then the next weekend was Navy Classic. My coach at the time put me in. I was able to go compete. So we had two guys, me and the starting guy, both competed. And my dad came down for the weekend night before. He was like, "How you feeling?" Whatever. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm just gonna go out there and have fun with this. This is what I wanted. Like I'm in the tournament now. You know what I mean? This is where I wanted to be. And it seems silly, maybe some people who like are listening, but like to me, it was huge. It was a win. I got that bit. It was a little win for me, and I
Yeah.
got the little win. And I was like, I'm just gonna enjoy this little win, Dad. Like I'm weight's fine. I'm gonna make weight tomorrow. I'm going in there free as a bird, just gonna let it fly and do my best. And that first match I got out there, I pinned the kid in the second period. And that feeling to me was like just it was validating. And
Yeah.
then I wrestled the next match and the kid took a bad shot and I pinned him in the first period. So now I'm back, right? 2-2. I go 0-2 barbecue in the first tournament and then two pins, and I didn't even
Yeah.
see the third period yet. Now, I didn't place in the tournament. I'm not gonna like make it seem like I won the thing. Like
That's okay.
nature
It's
took its
okay.
course. I did my best. I ended up I was a round away from placing in the tournament, but that's not the point. The point is I had these little wins that compounded up to where I was in a spot where I didn't know where to go. I didn't know
Yeah.
where I'd be. My one goal is to make it to the tournament, and I ended up doing, better than I
I
thought.
mean, Dean, you're a total storybook of perseverance.
Yeah.
It's it. I mean, you think about that, and for some guys, it's like, hey, I got to win the national championship, and
Yeah.
for some other people, like just getting back on the mat is a
That's
major
it.
win, you
That's
know?
it. You got
And
guys in the gym benching
yeah,
315. You got people in the gym just want to get back at it. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And
right,
it's like there's no right or wrong. Everyone has their goal and they have
yeah.
to, make it work. So
And I can feel a lot of pain for you. Let me tell you why.
yeah.
Because I had my right shoulder reconstructed
Yeah.
back in,
Oof.
in
Oh,
in 1984.
yeah.
That's when they took chainsaws to your
Oh.
arm and fixed it. And and the rehab for that, I, ugh, I still can't. I don't even want to talk about it. I
Yeah.
sweat thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then playing through it the couple years after that, the amount of pain that I deal with now as an older guy, sometimes it's just like, holy crap.
Right.
So I have an idea of what you went through,
Yeah.
but I only had one surgery. You had what, three?
Three. Three on the
Which is,
same arm. Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this again, is forget wrestling, right?
Yeah.
Forget the surgeries. let's just talk about how did you control the mental side of your brain with everything going on and stay so focused and positive to get you to the point where you're back on that mat.
Yeah. And it's funny because in a lot of instances I didn't. And you kind of when you love something for so many years, right? Like, and there's a lot of people who don't know this. Like a lot of times people only see you for what they know in recent time, but they don't know the 5-year-old kid who started wrestling, and started it with his dad because he wanted to have some fun, and then turned into a 14-year-old who had his, world crushed, who then spent the whole summer trying to get back, who then went through high school and all these, different things, and then like they don't know that side.
Right.
So when things kind of begin to take a turn, and you act maybe a little bit differently, and people just think, oh, this guy's just, kind of a jerk or whatever. Like, obviously, there's no excuse for that, but there's a lot that goes into this stuff. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
what it took for me was, and I mentioned it kind of earlier, and I'll bring it up again. It's like surrounding myself with the positive people,
Right people.
and those are the people who uplifted me, even if they didn't know they were doing it. I
Yeah.
felt like I was accepted, and I felt like I was still on this team, like I still had good friends. And then all of a sudden you start acting a little bit, more natural. You're
Yeah.
not as upset all the time. You're just, you feel a little better. So I think who you surround yourself with really plays an important impact. And sometimes you don't know what that's going to be. You may enter, if it's work, for example, you may enter an organization that you think is going to pan out, and all of a sudden you get there and the people are not what you thought. They're toxic,
Yeah.
and it's not what you, because you just don't know. Um,
Right.
I think for some reason, sometimes you just got to go with your gut. And I felt like when I went to the Naval Academy at first, that place was different, that those guys were different, and that I was going to experience something like that. And I did.
Yeah.
So ultimately for me, it was a combination of that with just knowing, just I had to stay true to myself, and I knew what I
Yeah.
wanted deep down, regardless of how I may have felt. I wanted to keep wrestling. I wanted to make it work, and that was it. And
Yeah.
staying true to that, keeping that in the forefront, knowing that I had to keep up in other areas and stay in the classroom and stay, extra hours and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Just trust in the process, honestly. Just stay in the course.
You got to believe in the process. If you
That's it.
believe it, you'll trust it.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it. And I believe that it was going to end up in a spot. I didn't see it going anywhere else. And I think the cool part was I knew that, if it didn't work out, I still had a good support system, and I was still going to graduate from the school I wanted to graduate from. And at that time too, I'll bring this up. I began to feel more passionate and have a, passion for being a leader and trying to do that in the service and trying to be the best leader I could. And at the end of the day, I was like, listen, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to try to be the best for, in my case, it was the Marines and, the
Yeah.
people around me. And that's kind of what ended up being the case. So,
So, can you pinpoint one favorite moment in the military academy?
oh, at the Naval Academy,
Yeah.
my, it's funny. There's so many negative moments, and there's a lot of positive moments though, I could tell you one, and it's going to sound ridiculous, but I'll never forget this feeling. I was on the fence, with failing, not just like failing in class. If I failed that class, like it would have been really bad. Like just, I would have had a lot of explaining and answers to do. And like I really did. I worked my hardest. The class was calculus 3 with vector fields.
Ugh.
Not for me, not an easy class.
For anybody, it's
Um,
not an easy class.
and I just remember I was just, if I got a D on the final, this sounds so ridiculous. Like people are like, a D, really? Like that was for me. If I got a D on the final, I was going to pass the class and I was going to be good to go. Um, and I remember just we could check everything on our phones, whatever. And I was home at the time. We had got off. I had 4 days off before I had to go back and start training that summer. And I was in the car with my parents, and I just checked my phone, and I remember I'd like start like slapping the car seat, and they're like, "What happened?" It's like, crisis averted, guys. I'm good. I have my GPA is where it needs to be. We passed the class. We're good, because I was good everywhere else. Like
Yeah.
everywhere else is fine. That was the one class I just couldn't figure out, and I just needed to get through that one. I would have been fine, if I did, and I was. So that was the, to me, that was a small win. We're all about
Yeah.
the
It's a
small
big
wins
win.
here.
How many hours did you log with the tutor for that one?
I honestly, days worth. It got to the point where I was doing over 2 hours of extra time a day. Maybe like, and that may be a stretch, but like, out between an hour to 2 hours a day, because I
Right.
would go to the one in the afternoon and I go to the one at night. I would do two.
But Dean, that's the difference between winners and losers.
Yeah,
It is willing to, I changed the word. Like everybody says, oh, you got to sacrifice your time. No, you don't. You invest your time.
that's it. Yeah,
You invested your time to get the return on that time that you needed,
yeah, and
and so, especially the young guys today, like they don't understand that. I mean, like
yeah,
investing their time to be better.
yeah.
They'd rather goof off,
That's it. And
you
it's
know?
achieving it goes to realistic goals. And for
Yeah,
me, the realistic goal was to pass the class. And that
yeah.
was with a D, and that's what I got. So, and that was it. And that's my
All
story.
you
So yeah,
needed.
that
You,
was a
you know,
that was a good one. And then, honestly, another one, and I don't want to, take up too much time with
no,
stories because I
good.
can go all day. But, finding out that I was going to be, I kind of mentioned it, that I was going to be in the starting lineup my senior year. I remember I found out like right around, because everything got delayed because it was a COVID year. It was
Yeah,
right around kind of Christmas. And I remember we had a choice to make, our coach, because everything was really strict during COVID. They were going to let everyone else go back for like a month and a half, which is like crazy. We had been locked there since August. Everybody no, so like everyone was looking at that time like this is my break. You know what I mean? And they said everyone except in-season athletes that are competing soon. So that meant wrestling, and we were not going to go back. It was, you guys, you have a choice to make. You either go back and you can't wrestle for the rest of the season because you break like the COVID bubble or whatever it
yeah,
was, or you stay back, you miss that break. And for me, it wasn't even an option. I'm staying back.
yeah,
Like, whether I'm
yeah,
starting or not, like, I love this team. I love the guys
yeah.
on this team. I
Did
saw
anybody
it as an
leave?
opportunity to, what's that?
Did anybody leave?
Be shocked at how many people left.
Really?
Yeah. You would be shocked at how many guys on the team decided that break was more important. And listen, people had stuff going on. Like, I
Yeah,
don't I don't know
yeah.
what was going on in anyone's life at the time.
It was a
I
crazy
will
world,
say it was a really difficult time.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah,
for us at that school, more than others, just because. I mean, I could go all day about what it was like, because you want to know what the Naval Academy is like. The Naval Academy during COVID was worse than what you can imagine, just because of how strict everything was with the
I
military
can
and
only
everything else.
imagine.
It was not easy, and so a lot of
Yeah,
guys, they I don't know what they had going on. So, if that was the decision, that was the decision. For me, I knew what I had going on, and it was that I'm not going to leave this team, and I'm not going to leave these guys. And it worked out well. And and at that time, um, starting lineups got announced, because Coach Colott was the kind of guy where he took everything into consideration. You know what I mean? Like wrestling ability, teammate ability, like a lot of different things.
yeah,
And we all knew that. Like, we all knew that no one's spot was secured. So he was, part of the decision was who's staying. And that, it wasn't to weigh anything over anyone's head. That was the reality of the situation. Who's staying, who's going.
yeah.
And the guys that stayed, we got the list down. And then the lineups were announced. So that was a really positive moment for me to see that and feel
Pretty intense.
that. Yeah, it was fun. And it just, it was
Let me ask you this question. How'd that phone call go to your dad?
it's funny. Here's how, and this is another thing about making it the right decision. I remember calling him, and he was just really excited for me because he knew everything that was going
Yeah,
on. But I knew deep down he just was pumped to watch his son wrestle again in the
yeah,
starting. You know what I mean? Like, he loved
of
it too.
course.
And he started scouting, like, he loved scouting and watching all these videos. But it's funny because, all the guys that agreed to stay back, they ended up doing a work around or something where we were able to go home for a week. So we still got to go home, experience Christmas with our family, and come back. So it all worked out really well. And we didn't know that at the time. It was stay for
Yeah,
that long or go. And, it ended up working out for us. It stayed. So
it's a great moment.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I just
awesome.
want to show you my phone here for a second. Can you see
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah, Mikey G.
Yeah,
That's so
it's
good.
funny. So let me ask you this question. I know we're going long. I hope you don't mind because I could talk to you
Oh,
for 2 weeks,
I
you know?
I could be here all night. Yeah, this is
All
great.
right.
I'm having a great
So
time.
graduation, you throw that hat up in the air,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Tell me about that. Like I can only imagine how that's got to feel.
I'll tell you what, and that whole 2 weeks was just a different experience because I'll be honest, everything was done. My wrestling career was over. School was over. Like I graduated with a GPA that I never thought I'd have. I ended up I'm really selling myself not negatively as a student. I ended up hanging in there. I got, it wasn't a great GPA, but it was serviceable, I guess.
Hey, you got a diploma. Is your anybody's GPA on their
I could
diploma? No.
not one person in the Marine Corps has ever asked me what my GPA was. None
Yeah.
of my Marines cared. All they cared
Yeah.
about
I don't
was,
think any of your clients now are asking you what your GPA is.
no, no, God no. And it's that that's fine by me. So,
Yeah.
but no, I ended up having to find, like school was spoken for. I knew I was good to go. At that point, we had all gotten our places, like, because we were going to stay in Annapolis. It's the way it worked was you graduate. And for me and most of my friends, we were going to be in Annapolis for 3 months working for like it was called the PE department. It was basically like all the summer trainings that go on, like you have to do work in a different capacity. Me and all
Okay.
my friends worked with like basically the summer workouts for the freshmen that came in, which is a great job. It was a lot of fun. Because you get to see it from a different lens and all that, and
Yeah.
which is cool. But anyway, so you know, we got to live like college kids for 2 weeks for the first time ever. You know what I mean? We had our own
Yeah.
places, our own, the certain responsibilities, but it wasn't a lot, show up at this time and then you're out by whatever. So I show up to graduation, just zero voice, just had a great time overall. And I remember like you throw your cover in the air. And I remember I had two covers. I had one that was really nice and one that was all beaten up and I got it at the prep
No,
school.
it covers your hat.
Yes, correct.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? That's the one I'm throwing up and I'm never going to bring back. I chose that one. And I just remember like the graduation came and went, and all of a sudden you're at that moment. And I could tell everyone was just, you're ready to grin. Everyone's just sitting there, they're ready to go, they're antsy. And, I threw the cover, whatever. And you don't know what to do with yourself. You're just like kind of running around. You want to hug somebody, whatever. And I remember I saw one of my best friends, his name's Tanner. So shout out to Tanner if he listens to this. But and we just like we're all in our Marine Corps uniforms. He's a Marine as well, and just huge hug, ruined all of our ribbons and medals and stuff. We didn't even care. Just big hug, like super excited. It's just that graduation meant more to all of us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It was a developmental period. As you changed as a person. You know what I mean? You were
Yeah.
not the same person. A lot of people go to college and they maybe they're the same person when they're done, or maybe they're worse. I don't know, but I know that a lot of people, everyone who went there was better off in some way for sure. So it meant a lot more to us. And then I got to see all my family and friends, and my wife was there too, and I just remember she was so happy, and that I'll never
There had to
forget
be a
that.
ton of tears.
A lot of tears, yeah. A
Yeah.
lot of people just my mom couldn't believe it, like she could, but she couldn't. Just that we were finally at that
Yeah.
point, and it was awesome.
I think, like you said, with you say you talk to your friends, like, hey, remember back when we were second year, we couldn't wait till this was over.
Yeah,
I can't imagine how your parents were feeling, right?
yeah,
Watching you suffer, for lack of better words, through all of
yeah,
this stuff, not just the physical side, but the mental side, the athletic side, the classroom side, the military side.
yeah,
And I mean, it's tough as a parent to watch your kids suffer. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You'll see soon, right? And to see a child come out the other end of all of that pain and suffering to succeed at that level, I can't imagine what your parents were feeling at that time.
It was a lot of excitement, really, and it was a lot of pride, and they were just they always saw the light at the tunnel for me, and they were glad that I was able to find it. Like I think that's what it ultimately ended up being, because
Yeah,
I think we talked a lot about on the show so far, just all the different roadblocks,
yeah.
all the different things that it wasn't always going to be what we thought, and it ended up being, and it ended up everything happened the way it was supposed to in a way.
Came full circle.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people, and like if I could say something to a college athlete, to a college student, to a person, you know, you just got to keep rolling with the punches. You're in the trenches, things aren't going the way you want it to.
Right.
Like there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and
Yeah.
time ends up kind of killing everything off, but what you do with that time determines
Yeah.
the outcome. And I know
Yeah.
that's cliche, but it's true. I mean, if you're having a tough time and you're not getting out and doing something about it to change it, then there's just,
Just
it's
keep
kind
moving
of,
forward
that's it. Yeah.
and never quit. Never.
Yeah.
No matter
Absolutely.
how hard it gets, you just don't quit.
Yeah, and my parents were great through the process, though. I mean, they'll tell you the phone hours we logged, a lot of phone hours, and a lot of just great advice and a lot of help. And if it wasn't advice, it was just people to talk to, and
Yeah.
because it was a hard school, but
Yeah.
overall, I'm really grateful for the process, and I'm extremely set up for success
Yeah.
as a result of how to live my life. So
Where are all your uniforms?
this, so it's funny. I got half of them in my closet in my new house upstairs. I got, another half of them in my parents' basement. Just
How many
sitting
do you have?
between the Navy ones, the Marine Corps ones, and the midshipman ones. I mean, got to be over 25, like different sets, I mean, of
Yeah.
things, maybe more. And that's not even actually more than that. That's not even including like the PT gear and like, the stuff that you don't think about, like the
Yeah.
workout clothes and whatnot. But as far as like strict uniforms go, like, 15 different, like all kinds of different things. Cause you have like five alone as a midshipman, you get like five in the Marine Corps, and then you have like I had like four Navy ones, or something like that. So
Yeah.
just all different kinds of stuff. Um,
So
maybe
looking,
exaggerating, but it just feels like a lot.
yeah.
So
So looking back on those now, how
yeah.
proud are you of those uniforms?
It's funny. They take on a different meaning now. You know what I mean? Because at first you don't necessarily know or understand kind of what it's all about. You just see it as an obligation. You're just like, I'm
Yeah.
being forced to wear this. Like
Yeah.
you don't see yourself as being impactful in it necessarily. And I think eventually, as you move on through time, like there's a lot of instances, especially in the Marine Corps, like the last 5 years, I have learned more in the last 5 years in the Marine Corps than I have, you know, maybe ever. I mean, just there's so much, because you meet so many different people and so many different things, and you learn a lot about yourself. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that I did that I wish I would have changed, and I would have acted differently. And it's definitely interesting, but you begin to see that, when you see the uniforms now, it's like you remember those times, and you remember what it built and what you made you into. So
Yeah.
not to mention, you're representing an elite group, and a lot of people that came before you, and that begins to set in after a while. And when you just realize, hey, it was a privilege to wear this, and I just come
Yeah.
from a longer line of people, it's really cool.
So when you transitioned into the Marines after graduation, did you get to choose what you wanted to do? To walk us through that, and like you were there almost 4 years, and that had to be a whole nother challenge in itself.
Yeah, no. So you don't get to choose necessarily. You have preferences. So, similar to the Marine Corps, right? Like when I was at the Naval Academy, I didn't like I wasn't guaranteed to be in the Marine Corps. What happens is you put your preferences forward based on, performance to date, throughout time. Like, and like, because there are friends of mine and people I know that didn't get the first choice that they wanted for a service, like service selection,
Yeah.
which is hard, for a lot of folks. And luckily for me, I put Marine Corps ground first, and I got it. And then when you go to the basic school, which is the first stop in the road of being a Marine, that teaches you like provisional rifle platoon commander tactics and how to do all kinds of Marine Corps rifleman training. I was able to rack and stack where I wanted to go, because there's 20 different, maybe some people don't know this about the Marine Corps, but there's 20 different things you could do. You don't necessarily have to be, an infantry person, or you don't have to be like a, artillery Marine, or, something. You can be, in a different, we call it MOS, Marine Corps Occupational Specialty, or Military Occupational Specialty. Um, and based on your performance at TBS, it kind of depends on where you fall into. And I began to explore different MOSs and kind of jobs, and I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I wasn't set on one more than the other.
Right.
And I knew my wife and I were getting serious at that time. I knew we were going to be together for the long haul for sure. We both knew it. It's just a matter of time. So, it was kind of a decision I had to weigh her in on as well. And, I had some friends from Navy wrestling that went into the Marine Corps finance route, which is an interesting job. A lot of people don't think you can do that. I learned more about it, decided it was something I wanted to pursue. I put that as my first choice, and luckily I got it. And then when it comes to where you're going to get assigned for a duty station, that's kind of like throwing a dart at a board. And, it's like we're second lieutenants, you kind of go where you're going to end up going, and needs of the Marine Corps come first. And the Marine Corps needed me in Okinawa, Japan, and that's where I went. So
And you were there for 4 years,
I was in Okinawa for 1 year, and then
1 year.
I was able to come back. I got an opportunity to go work on so our MOS has two sides, our job has two sides. There was an opportunity to go work the other side, which makes you a more well-rounded, like kind of Marine, I guess, and finance Marine for that matter. Took the opportunity, and it ended up working out, and I was in Camp Pendleton, California. So um worked out
It's a
pretty
nice
well.
place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So, we took that, and it's interesting. It wasn't easy for us in Japan. My wife has certain medications that she needed, and they didn't have so like the opportunity came about, it was something that came about because she wasn't able to get the treatment she needed, or like I guess the medication she needed in Okinawa. So we were able to get that kind of care in San Diego. And that was what brought the opportunity about. So it was a combination of things, but
Yeah. Hey, there's
ultimately,
nothing wrong living in San Diego.
no, it was great, because it was 1 year for like a first tour isn't like a traditional timeline.
Yeah.
So if there's any, like, I'm sure there's vets listening to this, like, what happened to this guy that he had a year, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
when you have kind of a family situation, that kind of takes priority, so
Yeah.
that's what
So
ended up
give me your favorite moment being in the Marines.
happening. Oh wow. That's a really tough one, because there's a lot of, I guess when I was in Okinawa, I had a section of it, like 25-ish people, 20 between that, and like maybe 26, 27, depending. Six of them were Japanese civilians, Japanese ladies were in my section, which was a very interesting, like, dynamic. The best workers, best people you can ever ask for. They were so kind and respectful, and they're like my friends, and they were great people. But being in charge of a section is, for me, as I think I was, what, 24 at the time, or no, yeah, 24, 25 at the time. Um, is daunting. It's interesting, to be honest. You learn a lot of stuff at school. You think you're prepared for it, and then there's so many different things that you get confronted with that you just kind
Yeah.
of have to do your best with. And at the end of the day, everyone teaches you how, like, hey, this is how you should be a leader. This is how to lead. This is what to do. You just kind of have to be yourself, really. If I would have tried to apply the textbook to being a leader, then I wouldn't have been able
Yeah.
to be as impactful. I wouldn't have been myself necessarily, because there's things I probably wouldn't have done. And looking back on it, there's things that I could have done better. That I definitely missed the mark on. Um, but I think, to round out the question, like, my favorite part of it was when I was leaving Okinawa, I wasn't going to have that section anymore. So when you're a leader, you don't exactly, or when you're in charge of anybody for that matter, or the civilian military, you don't always get to see how you're doing. You don't necessarily know. There's a lot of times where I'm like going home, I'm like, am I doing a good job with these guys? Like, do
Yeah.
they know, that I care? Like, I guess, because it was an interesting job that we worked, out there. And when it was all over, I had a lot of positive feedback from people, and like some of the things that they had said were things that I didn't know they were thinking. Some of them I didn't even know they were capable of saying that many words. They were really quiet people, and then all of a sudden, when they had something to say, they were really kind, and had some really nice things to say. That to me was really uplifting, and
Now, were they saying that to you or to other people and it got back to you?
to me, they
Okay.
wanted me to know, and it was people in my section, it was people in other sections. I made a lot of strong relationships out there in Okinawa, and some really good people.
Yeah.
And I think being able to hear kind of like that there was an impact there, and that things went well, and that I did try because I tried my hardest. I poured my heart and soul into it, and I really did.
Yeah.
I cared about those people. And to hear that it was impactful, it was really, that was an awesome feeling for
Yeah.
me. So
So what kind of leader are you, if you had to describe it?
uh you know, it's funny because there's so many buzzwords, like that I could throw out there. I could say, oh yeah, lead by example, servant leadership. There's so many different things. I would say I am the type of leader that, and I'm not going to put it to one word. I'm not going to get in your face. I'm not going to mess with your time. I'm not going to like micromanage you, but more so somebody who's going to like lay out clear expectations. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to be a human being. You know what I mean? There's too many people who just shy away from the human aspect of it. You know what I mean? I'm not going to put on a facade. I'm not going to show up, you know, with feeling like I have to put on some kind of like act almost, or feeling like that I have to like, hey, I'm wearing these, bars or whatever, and like that makes me only have to act a certain way. I'm gonna be myself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like if I see an opportunity, to apply some humor or to be, kind in the moment, like I can do that. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna act the way I think I should as a person.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, I don't want to call it unconventional, but almost like unconventional leadership to the point where it's like, hey, a lot of the times people think, hey, superior subordinate, there's the line, there is nothing
Right.
else, and I am in charge of you, and that's it. Like, no, letting them know that the biggest thing for me was like, hey, this is a family. You know what I mean? Like, it's still very much so going to be like, you know, if it gets to the point where I'm not like I'm feeling like I'm not in charge and they're beginning to take advantage, then the conversation comes into play. But it's setting a clear expectation early that hey, it's player coach. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's very much so like I care about you as an individual, and I let the record show. Obviously, I mean I'm in my spot. I'm a lieutenant, and there's nothing I can do about that. And when I feel that someone would maybe kind of tote the line, that's when you have to kind of jump in and have the conversation. But it's never negative. It's
Yeah.
just kind of letting the expectation out there. So I know that's a long-winded answer. And
That's
if I have
good.
any of my old Marines listening, they're like, "Yep, he's on his tangent again." It's on. I have a plaque over here, and it says "long-winded tangent," so it happens. But for me, it was just letting them know, hey, like this section's a family, and I'm here for you guys, and that was it. And nothing else. And that was it. So
Well, you know when you're a good leader is is when the people you have been leading, they talk about you
yeah,
behind your back,
yeah,
but and what they're talking about though is good things
yeah,
and the
absolutely.
value that they learn. But here's where you're really going to find out what kind of leader you are, Dean, is down the road, a little bit
Yeah,
further when you're 34, 35, and you're going to get some text messages or some phone calls from guys who you were their leader in the past. And they say,
yeah,
Dean, I'm still doing what you taught me.
yeah,
I what I've learned from you, I'm using now. And that is when you say, holy crap,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's I've already gotten a few. Like I spoke to one recently, one of the Marines in Okinawa, and it's just when you have those conversations and you know that they still can feel like they can confide in you and ask for advice. I mean that
Yeah.
is it's really impactful, And then when I had the conversation recently, that Marine's thinking about becoming an officer, and so it was just like, hey, this is what I want to do, and I just want to kind of pick your brain on what it means for me and what it meant to you, and like so that conversation for me, one, I mean, all day long, like I'm so happy to help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever I can do to help, and to me, it showed that the fact that they felt comfortable enough and trusted me enough to give them advice and trust that advice, felt good. And at
That's
the end
awesome.
of the day, I mean, I learned a lot of this stuff from my dad. I mean, my dad's got his own podcast. My dad, owns his own business, and he was a great father, you know what I mean? And I learned a lot of this stuff from him. And the one thing about my dad is he is unapologetically himself. Like, and I'm sure you agree. You've known my
Oh
dad
yeah.
for years. He is unapologetically Tom Caravella, and there's something unique about him, and he treats everybody the same way. And there's not one person I know that has ever given me a negative review about my
Yeah.
dad.
Yeah.
And when you grow up with that, it allows you to emulate those things. And I'm really thankful that I was able to emulate some of the stuff he taught me. So
That's cool. So Marines is over now. You're retired.
Yeah, so I'm doing a program that allows me to work from home. I got approved to do it, and it basically allows service members to kind of get their feet wet with an employer, um, with the idea of that employer then hiring you afterwards. So you exit the service with an opportunity. Since my dad's a business owner, he was able to get his business involved in the program, which put me here. So
You could have came and worked with
hey,
me.
yeah, I didn't know. I would have looked it up.
I would have hired you yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, that's too good. Yeah. I mean, that I wouldn't. Who knows if it was enticing enough, I would have told the old man from the start.
I'm never gonna steal you from your father. Never gonna
Yeah. No,
do it.
I've always wanted to at some point, and I gave the military, a fair shot. Like there was part of me that was going to stay, and I
Yeah,
talked to my wife about it, and both of us decided that it was time to move back.
right. So when
But
are you officially done yet or no?
May is when I
May. Okay.
officially done off active.
So
Yeah.
next month.
Next month. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
10
So now
years.
are you going to be in the reserve too or no?
No, I'm just going to exit active service and be done. I'm not going to pick up anything in the reserves. No.
All right.
Yeah.
So now you're working with your dad.
Yes.
Give me a couple of minutes on that one.
Oh, it's like I'm 8 years old and he's showing me wrestling moves again, honestly, except this time, it's there's actual people that I'm talking to, and there's other things at stake, and I think he is the one thing that has been really interesting to see and eye-opening for me is the brand he built. The Carolyn Group is the company, is my dad's company and what I work for now. In medical affairs, I didn't realize just how much of a name for himself and the brand that
Yeah.
he built over these years. And seeing that is like, I went to a conference recently and there's people coming up to me, who already know who I am because he posts about me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And, they're talking about my dad like he's a celebrity. And like to me, like he's my dad, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I
Yeah.
don't expect that. So having that though has been extremely impactful for me because it's allowed me to not be a stranger early on. Like when I call people about job opportunities or I call people about, you know, even questions, because there's certain, medical affairs leaders that you can call, to like see if they're open for opportunities and whatnot. But they already know the company, they know the name. Like when I got into it, I was expecting to have to explain myself or to be a cold caller where they hang up the phone and they're like, no thanks, I don't want what you're selling. But they hear the name, they
Yeah.
know, and they're like, okay, this is something legit. Like they're
Yeah.
bringing me something legitimate, and I trust this person and I trust the work. And sometimes they know who I am, which is even crazier. I just started this, so it's been fantastic, and I think it's a testament to my dad, and it's taught me one thing, like it's all about how you make people feel.
Yeah.
People will remember how you made them feel. And
Yeah.
my dad has left such an impact on so many individuals out there, and he has carried this brand honorably. I mean, like he just did a segment on his show about how you can ruin your career in 5 minutes. Like
Yeah.
it takes 2 seconds to destroy 25 years of your
Yeah.
career. And that's the same, that's the case in the military. That's the case, at the Naval Academy and life in general. And I think the
Yep.
one thing that's been really cool to see is my dad has carried such a great, name for the business and himself over this time. And it's only gotten stronger. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just, and he's teaching me these things, and that's what I plan to do, moving forward. So
Yeah.
it's been so much fun. I've really
I
enjoyed
think
it.
what your dad carries is pride,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
right? Like pride in his name, his appearance,
Yeah.
his
Oh,
reputation, his like you said, his brand. Like he has so much pride, and that's what makes him who he is.
oh yeah, 100%. I'll tell you what, my dad has some of the best style out there. You will never see that guy not dressed to impress. And
No.
he's always, and like he takes pride in his appearance. He
Yeah.
works out 7 days a week.
Yep.
And we work out at the same gym, and it's just we're there every day, which has been a lot of fun. You know what I mean? I get to go to lift with my dad, work with my dad. And my mom was like, are you guys gonna get sick of each other? Like it's every day. And honestly, my dad's like my best friend. So the answer is no.
Yeah, but
We're
how do
not.
you, I mean, you haven't spent really real time with him in almost 8 years.
That's the other thing. Yeah.
You
They
know,
took
so
a
you're
lot of
this
time
is
off.
catch
Yeah,
up time, man. You know, you
100%.
maybe 5 years from now you might want to not look at each other, but right now I can only imagine the reunion, what that's got to be like.
It's been fun,
You
100%.
know? Oh
It's
yeah.
been fun.
I mean, your dad posts. I see all this stuff he posts about you over the
Yeah,
years. You know, and I've made a couple of comments here or there, and like cool stuff you're doing, and it's just the you can see in your dad's face. You know, like how proud he is of you and your sister too,
yeah,
of all the things
yeah.
that she's persevered through too. We're gonna get her on here next. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh, you got it. Listen,
Yeah,
you think I got a story? Like my sister's got a story, man. Like
yeah,
she
yeah,
she has been through a lot,
yeah,
and you talk about trust the process.
yep,
Like and here's the thing. I'm just blessed to be surrounded by so many great people. Like like this. It's my sister. It's my family. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
I'm able to be surrounded by somebody like that, and she has same thing, injuries.
yeah,
Different sorts of she went to the University of Pennsylvania. There's a lot that comes with that. That's like she wanted to get into an occupational space in investment banking that's extremely competitive.
yeah,
There's a lot to think about, and so things that I didn't have to think about that she did. So like her
yeah.
story is different than mine, but I mean, as a college gymnast, like the stuff that they go
It's
through,
crazy.
it's
Oh, it's
insane.
insane. It's
Yeah.
insane. It's
Yeah.
insane.
She committed to her first college as a freshman in high school. You know what I mean? It's
That's
insane.
focused.
I didn't even have my car license yet, and she was committing to colleges, you know?
Yeah,
So,
that's funny. So,
yeah,
Dean, yeah, I mean, you're only 28, right?
yeah,
And you've accomplished so many cool things, but you know, your military life is almost coming to an end,
yeah,
right? Your career, your professional civilian life is just starting out. Your family's just start. You got so many things just happening.
yeah,
But somewhere along the line, we all become a memory,
yeah,
right? And you got so many years to go for that. But that day's going to come. And if it
yeah.
were to come, how do you want people to look back on you and remember your name and the impact you made on them?
Oh man. That's the ultimate question, and I think what it boils down to is, everybody should be asking themselves this question more often because it is a sobering question. And I think if I had to pick something that I wanted people to remember me for, um, I mean, it's a combination of things. Ultimately, it's just I want to be a good family man. I want to be remembered for that, but I want to be remembered as someone who is strong in belief. And whether that's belief in my abilities, belief in the people around me. I'm belief in God. I'm a very faithful person. I want to be remembered as somebody who didn't stop believing that anything's possible. And with that, the people I speak to, like, yeah, you know what? That guy believed in me too. You know what I mean? Like he believed in himself, but he believed in me. And a lot of the Marines that I would talk to, I wanted them to know that I believed in them and that I knew that they can do whatever it took. And at the end of the day, I just want people to see that. And I think if there's one other thing to add in as well, tenacity. Like I'm just
Mhm.
going to say it.
Oh
I
my
want to
God.
be recognized as somebody who was tenacious. And I throw out the term against all odds a lot. Like I want to be somebody who, when the odds were stacked against him, when he was put in the depths and when he was in those trenches, just figured out a way to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think if it's belief and tenacity, belief in myself, belief in God, belief in, my wife and I believe all the time that, we're going to get to where we want to go as a family. And we're tenacious people. That's it. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
there's a lot of fight in the Caravela name, and that's us.
Yeah.
And it's something that's great. And then I'm blessed to have a baby boy on the way. I already know he's emulating, those traits. Early on there was a question if he was going to make it. He was a little bit behind in his growth, and he grew 2 weeks in 1 week. So my little guy's already defying the odds, and
He's fighting already.
yeah, it's been really really fun so far in that process as well. So yeah, I mean, I just that's what I would like to be remembered for.
Or your theme song's got to be the Journey song, "Don't Stop Believing,"
That's it.
right?
Yeah, that's it. As you know, it's yeah,
That's
it's good stuff though.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, Dean, we covered a lot of stuff, man. And your father's going to
this
shoot
is
me.
fun.
It's his
Yeah,
rule is
no,
30 minutes show or less, right? And we're
no.
going on almost 2 hours.
Yeah, it's been a great time though. I could talk to you all night.
No,
Seriously. I
this
got it.
your story and the typical person, I'm going to use me sitting on the couch, looking at social media, watching all this stuff your dad posts, and it looks like you had the perfect life.
Yeah.
It looks like from me sitting here watching great high school career. I didn't know
Yeah.
you had all those injuries in college. I didn't
Yeah.
know you struggled in the classroom. I just
Yeah.
see these pictures of all these cool things you're doing and the
Yeah.
places you're going, and your dad's with you. And I'm like, man, what a perfect life this kid's got.
Right.
And now the real world gets to hear, like, man, it's not all sunshine and roses along the way,
Yeah, 100%.
you
And
know?
it's funny because it's like, and you see those things and you think, okay, everything's great, and he's
Yeah,
probably such a nice guy. There are times, where I wasn't the nicest guy, probably. There was a lot going on, and there's a lot of things that where I didn't know, and that was just immaturity. You know what I mean? You mature and you act immature in a lot of instances. And then I was when I had to look in the mirror and say, listen, at the end of the day, like I have to treat people better. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
have to be a nicer person. And that was something that I learned while I was at the Naval Academy that I had to change because, maybe the review from other folks wasn't as positive. And I think looking back on it, I take a lot of things and a lot of my interactions with others with a grain of salt. Like if there was somebody that I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of, like 100% grain of salt now because I don't know what they were going through. You just
yeah,
don't know. Everyone's
yeah,
got something going on and it causes them maybe to act different ways. And, people find themselves after a while. So, you can't write anybody off,
no,
honestly. And
no,
that goes into the whole belief factor. I want to believe in people, and that's it. And it's funny. There's probably people listening to this who are like, you're the guy saying believe in people a year ago. Like, what do you mean? Like, you were saying things that didn't sound like you believe in people. But listen, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's just I always want to try to believe in folks and to try to make them better. And even
yeah,
if sometimes you stumble and even if sometimes you may not think so, that's kind of where my head's at
yeah.
the core. So
And when you believe in others, they believe in you,
yeah, that's it.
you know?
Yeah.
So, Dean, man, we covered a lot,
Yeah. It's
you
fun.
know, high school, college, Marines, working with your dad, overall life. Is
Yeah.
there anything we haven't touched on you think we should hit before we wrap it up?
Oh, honestly, this has been such a great time. I think not necessarily anything I want to touch on, but just something I want to highlight, again. And it's you can end up in a place where, maybe you think it's all over, and I don't know
Mhm.
what capacity that is for anybody. Everyone's
Yeah,
got different things in their life that they're doing, whether it's their job, this is obviously a platform designed for college athletes. So, for a lot of the folks, it's probably athletes out there where, you may not feel like yourself, you know what I mean? Like, and everyone knows kind of what that means. You're still you, it's still in there, you just got to figure out a way to ignite the fire and that's it, and whether that's, you got to know what that is for yourself, and for me, it was trusting the process and it was confiding in the right people. And it was honestly it was just trying to figure out a way to get back to
yeah,
that's what I enjoyed wrestling. I
yeah,
enjoyed being on the mat and it was figuring out a way to find the enjoyment and I did.
yeah.
And it's possible for everybody, because it didn't seem possible for me and it ended up working out. So
Just don't stop believing,
that's it.
right? Right?
That's it. Believe it's
That's it.
going to work out and that you're going to get back and that's it.
That's it. Well, Dean, man, thanks for being on. Thanks for taking 2 hours out of your night
Yeah.
to spend it with me and sharing your story that this is I was not expecting this. I was literally expecting sunshine and roses almost all the way.
Yeah. No, it's
But
been a hard
what a
road.
story. Yeah, what a story. I appreciate it. And if there's anything I could do for you to help you in your career and your next step in life, I was never really a good wrestler, so I can't help you there, you know. But any way I can help you, you got my cell number. Don't
Yeah.
ever hesitate to reach out.
All right. This has been so great. Thank you so much again. Such an honor. And I had a great time. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
awesome. Listen, I always end up by saying, stay strong.
Stay strong. That's it.